Mayor Emanuel announced the city's newest park, called the Paseo, will be built on an abandoned rail line running from Little Village to Pilsen. While residents welcome the news, they also worry it will fuel Chicago's gentrification. Longtime residents pushed out by rising real estate values. Barbara Pinto reports, starting in Pilsen.
For almost 60 of her 89 years, Lucy Gutierrez has called Pilsen home. She raised her family in this close-knit Mexican community. Her daughter, Rosemary Sierra, still lives here too. But lately, mother and daughter feel less at home as 20-somethings and students move in.
They are young, you know, we call them hipsters.
And old friends move out.
I've seen people leave and sell their houses at such ridiculous prices because it wasn't that they didn't want to stay here. It was that the rents start going up and they could not afford to pay the taxes.
Gentrification has come to Pilsen. Family businesses and bodegas bulldozed to make way for trendy restaurants and coffee shops. Condo developers offered Lucy more than $300,000 for the home she bought for only $8,000 decades ago.
I don't care how much money they put on the table. I don't want it. The only way I'm leaving is when they take me out feet first.
But many in this mostly working-class neighborhood cannot afford to stay. Byron Sigcho directs the Pilsen Alliance.
10,000 Latinos have left the neighborhood in the last 10 years, and that's a huge number. I think that's what we're trying to prevent, more people leaving their neighborhood. We want to create a diverse, a welcoming, vibrant community, but that is inclusive. It's for everyone, not only for those who can afford it.
That sentiment has turned to protest.
This is not for sale! This is not for sale!
Of new condo developments residents feel don't offer enough affordable housing. Pilsen is swept up in Chicago's latest wave of gentrification. First the North Side in the 70s and 80s, then Bucktown, Wicker Park, the South and West Loop, and now Pilsen, Bridgeport, Logan Square, and Humboldt Park. Lauren Nolan tracks Chicago's gentrification for the Voorhees Center for Neighborhood and Community Improvement. She says price pressures further polarize the city into affluent neighborhoods and deep pockets of poverty.
And it's resulting in a big affordability crisis, which is really affecting the overall health of the city.
From their home in Humboldt Park, Mary Scott Boria and her daughter Carmen watch the slow but steady transformation.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, you tell people you lived in Humboldt Park, and people are like, well, Humboldt Park, how could you live there? You know, that it had this reputation of being sort of gang infested.
Gentrification, they say, has its upside. Less gang and drug activity, more stores and restaurants, and the recent opening of the Bloomingdale Trail, a $95 million linear park built on an abandoned rail line. But progress has its price.
A friend of mine who lives in the area, who lives right on the trail, and she got a notice saying, you can stay here when your lease is up, but your rent is going to go up by $450 a month.
Here in Humboldt Park, only 35% of residents own homes. The majority, 65%, rent, and worry that all this new development will price them right out of their own neighborhoods. Alderman Roberto Maldonado worries too. His 26th ward includes Logan Square and Humboldt Park.
Economic development is the creation of jobs, keeping jobs in this neighborhood, attracting new jobs. Economic development is not building $1 million plus homes and in spaces where you have modest home and kicking the old neighborhood or neighbors out.
Maldonado has changed zoning to make his ward less attractive to condo developers and is trying to cap property tax assessments near the Bloomingdale Trail, but home prices are already soaring. In Logan Square, the average price of a single-family home is $477,500. That's up more than 27% from 2013. In Humboldt Park, the average cost is $100,000, up 52% from just 3 years ago. Back in Pilsen, Rob Ibanez manages Simone's, a craft beer pub that opened on 18th Street about 7 years ago. He sees the influx of new neighbors as the latest chapter in Pilsen's rich history. as home to Czech immigrants, then Mexicans, and now a new generation.
It's not just one group of people that's moving down here to Pilsen. There are all kinds of ethnic backgrounds and groups that are moving into the neighborhood. I feel like it's a very colorful neighborhood right now.
In Chicago, I'm Barbara Pinto for In the Loop.
Thanks, Barbara. And we're back again with Sarah Karp, Todd Belcore, and David Vigiano. So, David, gentrification is a bad word in some places, but doesn't it also bring some real benefits to those neighborhoods?
Of course, and I think it's just the natural ebb and flow of a city like Chicago. I've lived in lots of the city, in the neighborhoods when they were just starting to gentrify, and I got pushed out of several too when I was younger and not making enough money. I think that's just the way capitalism works. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I live, though, up in West Ridge now, and I love it because it hasn't been gentrified, and it's a very mixed neighborhood, and that's why I like living there.
And Todd, are these just market forces at work?
I think David brings up a good point in terms of being mixed neighborhoods. It's important for the city to retain its soul and have that diversity. And once you start having the premise that you only get these services when you gentrify, you only get a crime-free neighborhoods, you only get good schools when you gentrify, that actually gets to the heart of the issue with the leadership we have in Chicago. And I think that's the thing that needs to be fixed, not necessarily population changes, but leadership changes, and make sure that communities, no matter what their color or background, have the supports and the infrastructure they need to be healthy and vibrant.
But how do you strike that balance, Sarah? I mean, is it a matter of zoning or is it rent control? I mean, what kinds of specifics would actually take those market forces and put some policy behind them?
I think that's the key, is that we need to understand what's going on and take some strong policy movements to try and make sure that neighborhoods do stay mixed. And it's more than just housing. I mean, sometimes when you look at schools, which I've covered schools for a long time, and a lot of times when you have neighborhoods gentrify, at first nobody goes to the neighborhood schools. And then the neighborhood schools have no people. And the kids that are left in those neighborhood schools are, they wind up not getting as rich of an education. Well, over time, sometimes people start investing in the neighborhood schools, but what ends up happening is the kids that were there, they get pushed out. They do things, we have policies that actually cater to the gentrifiers, but don't worry about the people that have been there, the families that have been there for a long time. And when those people get pushed out, then what you wind up having is you don't take advantage of the wonderful thing that you could have, which is a mixed income school, which is actually better for both the kids that are, the more wealthy kids and the poorer kids.
Should we turn the question around? I mean, should the city be encouraging gentrification in some areas? And I'm thinking particularly the South and West Side, which are, in many places, are economic wastelands, communities like Roseland.
I think the city should be encouraging economic development. I think the city should be encouraging making strong schools and crime-free communities. And once they do that,
but don't you have to have a private investment in there to do those things first?
Well, I think so, but we also have tax dollars that we can direct very specifically. And they don't necessarily have to go to new stadiums for DePaul. They can go directly to programs and institutions to build up the infrastructure for these communities to make sure they're vibrant as well.
And there's a big difference between, the gentrifier who is affording a $500,000 house and just, bringing nice, solid, middle-class families back into neighborhoods. And I mean, that's what you'd like to see in neighborhoods is you just want, most people are working people. You want to see neighborhoods where people, working families are living in houses and, supporting the businesses, and there's businesses in the neighborhoods to support. We don't need, necessarily 1%ers to all be in the city.
David, you've got a point. Why don't you jump in?
You brought up a point earlier. I think rent control is really important. I think nobody should be forced to say, you can stay here if you want to pay $475 more a month. I just think that's a key way to destroy a community that's mixed. And I think it's really, really important that we keep rents reasonable and no huge jumps like that people have to move out.